Hello, and welcome to a probably ridiculously long and possibly unnecessarily convoluted recap of The Assassin's Blade. My name's Isabella, and I occasionally like to read. I also happen to have the memory and attention span of a goldfish. However, I am a goldfish who loves reading all of these, complex, interwoven, high fantasy book series where, one little detail that's just, casually mentioned in one chapter could all of a sudden be, super important 30 chapters later. Which brings us to Throne of Glass. My plan is to make these kind of, recap, summary-style videos as I go through the series. That way I can, look back through them in case I need a refresher or anything, because honestly, if there is one thing that I hate to do, it's rereading, especially when I already know the ending. And for the sake of continuity, cohesion, and my overall sanity, I've decided to build these videos in chronological order, which means that we're starting with Assassin's Blade. But it's definitely a bit different from the rest of the series, because Assassin's Blade is actually a series of prequel novellas. So it's about 5 novellas all put together in one book, and they happen before the Throne of Glass book first starts. Obviously I'm going to start with the Assassin and the Pirate Lord. I will try to divide it into different novellas if you do want to skim through and just move through if you just need a quick refresher. Without further ado, let's get into the Assassin's Blade, or as I like to call it, the first book I have read that made me shed physical tears. Our journey begins in Rifthold. Now, Rifthold, which is located right around here, is the capital of the expanding empire of Adarlan. This is basically where the glass castle is, the throne of glass, if you will. Possibly. Maybe. TBD. Anyways, it is the hustling and bustling capital, as well as the location of the Assassin's Keep. It's 4 a.m. in Rifthold. Do you know where your children are? Well, I can tell you where one 16-year-old is, and that is the council room of the Assassin's Keep. A meeting has been called by the king of the assassins, Arabin Hamel. Oh yeah, just a quick little disclaimer here. These names, almost entirely unpronounceable, so I will try my best, but we're gonna go with it. We're just gonna yeah. Anyways, I'm going to be using this picture of Rumpelstiltskin to represent Arabin Hamel, mostly because they're both gingers, partially because I like to imagine that he's a small little man. He's not, but I like to imagine that he is. Anyways, in this council meeting is 5 of Arabin Hamel's most trusted assassins, one of which is the beautiful, stunning, gorgeous 16-year-old Selena Sardathian. She has a gorgeous, long blonde hair and stunning blue eyes. Now, Selena, is Arabin Hamel's protege. She is known as Adarlan's assassin and is basically the best assassin in the land. After all, there are fewer things more terrifying than a 16-year-old. Never mind a 16-year-old who knows she's the best at something. Believe me, I would know. Across from her is Sam Cortland. Now, if Selena's the heir, then Sam's basically the spare. He's a year older than her, and they've basically been rivals since she arrived to the keep at 8 years old. She does spend an unnatural amount of time in this chapter just thinking of ways that she could murder Sam. They do not get along. Let's just say they're not the best of friends. There are some other assassins at the table, but they really don't matter. So moving on. Arabin's called this meeting because there was a mission gone wrong. One of Arabin's most trusted assassins, Gregory, has been captured after he fell into a trap, and he is currently rotting in the dungeons of the Glass Castle. Now Selena basically goes, "Really? That's it? That's why you called this meeting at 4 a.m? You woke me up for this? Obviously, just slip him some poison, take him out. That's it. We don't need a meeting to discuss this." Now, Sam, not exactly loving this. He's like, "What are you talking about? He's literally one of our own. We can't just kill him. That's not what we do, even though we're assassins." But then Arabin goes, "Yeah, we already did that. Don't worry about it. It's being handled." That is not the only reason they are here. Turns out there's a little caveat. Ben, who is Arabin's second in command, has been caught up in this little trap as well, and now his body is hanging right by the castle gates. Now this, Selena does not take quite well. See, Ben was basically her mentor. He was one of the few assassins and the people at the keep who were actually kind to her and showed her kindness. So obviously does not take this part well. She demands that they get his body back. She's like, where is his body? We can't just leave him rotting there. At this point, Sam says that they already tried to get his body, but it was too risky. They couldn't risk getting him back. They couldn't bring him back, like, without risking suspicions. And Selena's like, you're assassins? That's literally your job. What do you mean? And then they proceed to get into a little tiff, basically. That Arabin has to break up, saying, you're a fool to, like, mess with her tonight of all nights. Like, she's obviously not going to take this well. Don't mess with her right now. Because she's a little 16-year-old. She's not exactly the most level-headed assassin that there is at the keep. Selena ends up storming off, basically, being like, fine, you know what? I will do it myself. But just know that while I will do this for Ben, I will never do this for any of you. He's the only person that I will do this for. And of course, she does manage to bring his body back because she's just that girl. Adeline's assassin, everyone. We get to 2 months later, and Sam and Selena have been sent to Skulls Bay on a mission. Now, Skulls Bay is this little collection of islands right here. It's pirate territory, and it is ruled by the king of the pirates. There's a lot of kings to keep track of in this series. You'll get it. They are there to meet up with Captain Rolfe, the king of the pirates. I'm going to be using this picture of John Rolfe from Pocahontas 2, mostly because they both have the same name, but also John Rolfe ruined Pocahontas for me, and that makes him a villain in my books. He's this attractive, almost 30-year-old pirate, and he's known to have this, like, magical tattoo on his hand that he basically sold his soul for, and it basically moves and it tells him where his enemies are and if there's storms coming and stuff like that. However, it has not moved since magic disappeared from the land 8 years ago. Sam and Selena are waiting for Rolfe in his office. Now, they believe that they've been sent on this mission because some assassins have been found to be murdered, and they believe that the pirates were responsible for it. So they're basically there to, like, get their coin, to get some retribution. They need payment for these lives lost, basically. And Captain Rolfe is running a couple minutes late. So Selena is making herself at home in his office. She's making herself cozy. She's going through his stuff. She's going through his love letters. She's putting her feet up on his desk. She even ends up, like, taking something. She just does not care. Now Sam, not very pleased by this, but there's nothing we can really do. He's just kind of like, Selena, stop it. Like, don't do that. It's kind of like when you tell a cat to just, like, not tip over a glass of water over the edge, and it just does it anyways, just to spite you. Yeah, that's her. Anyways, so Rolfe shows up. Selena literally has her feet up on his desk, and he just basically goes, who is this diva? But literally, though, because Selena always has her face covered. Her identity's always been, like, a well-guarded secret within the keep as well. Everyone knows her name, but nobody knows what she looks like. And basically, like, everyone who does know her identity is sworn to secrecy by pain of death. Selena can probably best be described as a very confident lady. After swaggering out of Rolfe's chair, Selena tells Rolfe why they're there. She's like, we're here because we expect payment. We are here to get our coin. You murdered some of our assassins. Arabin sent us here himself, and here is a letter outlining outlining how much you owe us, basically. Rolfe takes a look at this letter, and it turns out that Arabin lied to them. So they're not actually there to collect payment. They're there because Arabin has decided to show an interest in the slave trade. And he plans to purchase 100 slaves from Captain Rolfe. And Sam and Selena are basically there to procure them. Selena, being Selena, tries to play it off. But deep down, the thought of dealing in slaves just doesn't sit right with her. She's, in her mind, she's just kind of going like, we're here for this? Really? Like, we're stooping so low as to trade in slaves? We have so much money. We don't need this. Like, we don't need this. She feels that purchasing slaves is basically beneath them. Rolfe tells them that it'll be a couple days to get everything in order to get the slaves ready and prepped for their trip back, so they have to stay in Skull's Bay for a couple days. That night, Selena is tossing and turning, thinking about all these slaves. So most of these slaves are essentially prisoners of war. A lot of them are from this area over here, which is called Ailway. It's like one of the recently conquered countries. And most of these slaves are just people who are probably resisting Aderlin's conquest. They're also just people who are probably just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They really had no choice. And finally, that night, Selena decides that she needs to find a way to sabotage this deal, because there's no way that she's going to be bringing all of these slaves back to Arabin. She spends the next couple of days with Rolf. She demands that she inspects the shipment of slaves. Now, Selena's set on asking as many questions as she can in the guise of protecting Arabin's interests, basically. But after seeing the conditions of the slaves and seeing that most of the slaves are just women, or men, women, and children who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, she gets pretty frustrated. And that night she decides she needs to go down to the beach to blow off some steam. Now Sam follows her, and then he's kind of something's up, something's not right. He's I've known you for years now. And they get into a little bit of a fight, physical fight to blows. But then he's tell me what I'm getting myself into, basically, because I know something's up with you. And Selena finally just admits, you know what, I might do something crazy. I am going to free all of this 200 slaves that are on that ship, because I can't stand it. At first, Sam's are you insane? Arabin and Rolf are both gonna absolutely murder you. There's no way that you can get out of this safely. But eventually he's you know what, you're right. And he agrees. So they start plotting this plan together. He also brings up the idea of them just not returning to Rifthold. He's there's gonna be consequences to this. We could do it, We could run away.
We could do it,
Sam's also pretty suspicious of Arabin and the whole reason that they were sent on this mission. He thinks there could be more at play here. Considering Arabin lied about the reason that they were sent on this mission, considering the reason that he sent both two of his best assassins just to pick up a shipment, basically, especially the two assassins that hate each other and are always at each other's necks. He's I think that there's a reason that I have a feeling that he wanted both of us out of Rifthold for the month. But Selena can hear none of this. Arabin saved her life. He basically raised her. In her mind, Arabin can do no wrong. There is no war in Ba Sing Se.
There's no war in Ba Sing Se.
Selena insists that they can trust Arabin, and they're not supposed to question him. Once again, there is no war in Ba Sing Se. A couple of days later, after they've been doing all this recon and stuff, it is showtime. The time has come. They have done some research, and they found that if there is an open tab ever declared in one of the taverns in Skull's Bay, the whole city just slips into chaos, basically. So they decide to open a tab that night. A gift from Arabin Hamel to the assassins, and in celebration for the partnership that is to come. Before joining into the celebrations, Sam and Selena sneak onto the two slave ships. Each ship carries about 100 slaves, so there's about 200 slaves total. And they knock out all of the guards, and they knock out all the captains. Don't kill anyone yet, but they do knock everyone out, tie them up, and then they release all the slaves who are underground and release their shackles. Now, the slaves are supposed to stay hidden, kind of stay under the decks of the ship and wait until sunrise. And she basically tells them that at sunrise, they all have to get the oars and paddle like hell to get out of there. Now, the reason that they have to wait until sunrise is because of the shipbreaker. This is a giant chain that protects the entire harbor. It doesn't let any ships in or out lest it breaks them. So it needs to be raised and lowered in order for the ships to go through. Selena is basically she's don't worry, I will deal with it. You don't have to worry. Just as soon as that sun rises, paddle like hell. Then Sam and Selena return to the tavern and get roaringly drunk. Or at least Sam does. And by roaringly drunk, I mean he pretends to be. They drill a small hole at the bottom of his cup so that it keeps like leaking out without anyone noticing. And Selena obviously still has her mask, so she can't really eat or drink anything. She's just there for the vibes. So they spend the night drinking, having a fun old time, playing cards with Rolf. And the tavern is basically overrun with all of these drunk pirates. Right before about 5 a.m., Selena discreetly trips over a passing pirate, which leads to this entire comical bar fight scene, basically. Like, the whole tavern and the whole town just erupts into, like, this raucous, crazy bar fight. So Sam and Selena, they, like, join in for a little bit. They fight off some pirates, and then they manage to sneak out. But along comes Rolf. He saw Selena trip that pirate, and he's like, you have been itching for a fight the entire time that you've been here. And as soon as one comes up, you're sneaking out. Something's not right here. Something's up. And just as he is saying that, the oars of the ships come out. And he knows right away. The ships are ready to make their escape, but the Stormbreaker is still up. So he looks at the ship, and he looks at Selena. He looks at the ship again, and he's like, I am going to kill you. What? What are you planning on doing here? And in a desperate attempt to get out quick, Selena does the only thing that she can think of. She rips off her hood, and she rips off her mask, and she shows Rolf her face. Now, she is so stunning, gorgeous, beautiful, and young that the distraction is enough for Sam to escape. And Rolf's left just like, basically. They fight for like a little bit, and then Selena manages to knock him out, and then she goes running towards the watchtower. It is crunch time. Those ships are making their way closer and closer to the chain, and it is still up there. Some pirates are scrambling, trying to stop the slave ships, going after them in their ships. But, surprise! Sam and Selena actually disabled all of the ships that were on the dock right before they went to the tavern, so the pirates are basically just scrambling on these tiny little lifeboats trying to catch up. She's also being chased by some pirates. She manages to get rid of them, but she does not have enough time to get to the watchtower, basically. And that's when Selena sees Sam on one of the watchtowers, opposite to her, like where the catapults kind of are. And there's like a dozen pirates that are like closing in on him. And he finally reaches the chain, but it is a giant, thick, gargantuan chain, right? And he is trying to like lower it, but turns out he can't do it by himself. It's like a two-man job. So, and Selena's she's like not there, obviously. So she just kind of watches as he decides to finally pivot, and he goes down to the catapults, which are on like a lower floor, I want to say. And he turns the catapult in order to like basically hit the chain, which is also a part of the building that it's in. And then right before the pirates reach him, and right before the ship reaches the chain, he launches it. Down goes the chain, down goes the tower, down goes Sam. Now, Selena's heart has dropped, which is a strange new sensation for her. But she's like, he's dead. There's no way he survived falling like a crushing tower. Anyway, she turns, she runs towards him, and along comes Rolf. Again. He's basically like, now I'm really gonna kill you, but I'm gonna take my time killing you. But Selena manages to disarm him again. It's just the two of them. He has no backup. It's just her and him. She disables him. She doesn't knock him out this time. And she pulls out these two papers that she had hidden in her tunic. And she's like, okay, so this is what's gonna happen now. She's like, one of these is a letter to my master, to Arabin, saying that the slave trade is over, and that if you ever catch him trading in slaves again, then you're gonna like hunt him down, basically. And the second one is kind of like a PSA, a memo, if you will, to the entire Skulls Bay populace, and it's basically saying that I, Captain Rolf, and my entire crew are disbanding the slave trade, and we will never trade in slaves again. Also, Skulls Bay will become a safe haven to all of those slaves that are fleeing Aderlin's rule. So she shows him these letters, and she's like, you're gonna sign and seal these. To which Rolf goes, absolutely not. Do you not know who I am? And Selena goes, okay, fine. Turns out that day when they were in his office, she was going through all his like letters and his love letters and stuff. She memorized his handwriting and she memorized his signature. And remember that little, like, how she was like just like a little klepto at the beginning, stealing all these things from his desk? Surprise! One of those things was his signet ring. She's like, I really don't need you to sign this. I can just kill you now, hide your body, tell everyone that you went after the slaves, and I'll post this anyways. And you won't be alive, basically. She's basically like, consider it a favor that I'm sparing your life and even giving you this option. But if I ever hear about you trading in slaves again, or if I ever hear about the trade slave going on in Skulls Bay, I will come back. I will hunt you down, and I will kill you.
No, sorry, no, keep going. I will kill you.
So he signs the papers, and then she knocks him out again. And then she runs to Sam. There's nothing left but rubble. She's screaming his name. She's digging through the rubble. She's breaking her nails. But there is nothing but a giant boulder where Sam once stood. She starts banging it. She's getting mad. She's hitting this boulder repeatedly. And then Sam appears behind her, covered in dust, being like, funnily enough, I don't think that is going to help move the boulder. And then Selena is just like, I was screaming your name. And then she runs and hugs him. And Sam hugs her back, and they have a moment. And she's like, I don't think anyone's really hugged me in like 2 years. But then she goes, Sam, if you ever tell anybody that I embraced you, I will gut you like a fish. Sam just laughs and goes, if you're done liberating slaves and destroying pirate cities, I think it's about time we go home. And so ends The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. So we are now moving forward to the next novella, The Assassin and the Healer. Now this novella takes place in a small backwards little port town so insignificant and irrelevant that it's not even on the map. Literally, it's not on this map. We're going to assume that it's somewhere within this area bordering Melisande. And in this little port town, in a grimy little rundown tavern / inn, we meet Irene Towers. Irene Towers is a barmaid that's been working at this inn for about a year now, which is about 11 months longer than she was planning on staying there. She's originally from Melisande, which is basically this country right over here. Melisande was conquered by Aderlin 8.5 years ago. What also happened 8.5 years ago? The magic fled the land. Irene's mother used to be a talented magical healer. She was known for helping a whole bunch of people around town, and Irene basically grew up always wanting to be a healer. However, with the takeover of Melisande came this kind of like crusade-ish-esque roundup of all these people with magical powers, basically. So do you remember that scene in Shrek where they were rounding up all the fairy tale creatures? So that basically happened here, except instead of like trapping them, they were basically murdering them. Irene had to watch her mother be burned alive at the stake. And since then, she's always had a very good stomach. She's had like a very iron stomach, you know, being able to stomach a lot of gross things, which is why working at the inn ended up being perfect for her, because it's pretty gross. Her mother was murdered. She was taken in by some cousins. She stayed there for a couple years, but she did end up feeling like a burden, and she decided that she always wanted to be a healer. So her plan was to go journey all the way down to the southern continent because she heard that there was still some magic in the land, and that's where they had this great magic school where they taught healers. So she was on her way to learn to be a healer when she made it to Inish and basically she ran out of money and she's been there ever since. So there's a night where Irene is working at the tavern, and there's this like strange new young woman at the tavern. She's completely hooded. She's like, can't see her face, but she's wearing all of these expensive, bejeweled almost weapons on. Like, she has all these weapons on her, and she's also wearing this like giant brooch that is basically a ruby the size of an egg. And she's just been staying at this inn for the last couple days. But this is not a 5-star establishment, shall we say. It is basically overrun with like mercenaries and thieves, and this woman in the corner is just asking to be robbed. But Irene can't say anything because the owner of the inn and her boss has interest in the robbing, and she will lose her job if she says anything. But yeah. And lo and behold, who is this woman? But Selena Saradathian. It's been about a month since they freed the slaves. And how did she end up in this backwater town? She has been sent on a mission from Arabin. Turns out he was not very pleased when he found out that his slave trade deal did not go through. So much so that he decided to basically beat her about an inch from death. She's had it rough. Like, she is literally covered from top to bottom in bruises. She's like cuts all over her body. She's not having a good time. And as a result of this, she has also been sent on a mission to travel to the Red Desert, which I guess we'll go over this way. The Red Desert is right over here. It's pretty far from Rifthold. There's like this Assassin's Keep that she has to go to. It's a pretty long mission, and she's stuck at this port town waiting for the next ship to take her across the ocean. Selena, however, still feels that she did the right thing. She has no regrets, if you will, of freeing the slaves. She was like, it was the right thing to do. I mean, she did end up liberating 200 slaves. She's been sent on this mission, and this time away, she's been having like these thoughts of possibly fleeing. She's at this port town, and she's kind of at this crossroads. She's like, a part of me really does not want to stay with Arabin. After what he did to me, she's like, I kind of just want to flee to the southern continent, maybe start my own guild, and maybe just starting over. The only thing holding her back is Arabin. Now, Arabin sees Selena as an investment. He's invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of years into her progression as an assassin, and she knows that if she were to run away, he would scour the ends of the earth searching for her. She owes him a substantial debt, so running away, as much as she would love to do it, isn't really an option for her. But she still, like, thinks about it. She's like, she's never really thought about running away before, but after what happened to her, she's kind of like, I am very much considering. Another thing that's kind of keeping her is the fact that she still has no idea what happened to Sam Corlin. They're kind of in this weird place where they became kind of friendly-ish at the end of the last novella. Which is something that's pretty new to her. She hasn't really had friends before. She's never really cared about other people, except for maybe Ben, and he's, gone. So she sits in the tavern with this giant brooch, and she's basically just waiting for somebody to try her. There is a point where the atmosphere just gets super tense, and she's like, something's finally gonna happen. But then, at the end of the night, the tavern closes and everyone goes. So she's like, oh, well, this was a bust. So she eventually goes up to her room, and she literally has to haul like her wardrobe and her furniture in front of the door to keep herself from going out, searching for a fight, and possibly killing someone. But after about 15 minutes, she can't stand being alone in her room anymore, and so she moves all the furniture back and she goes out to the streets of the Innish town. Meanwhile, Irene is locking up the White Pig. She's just relieved that no fight came out. She's like, I just want to go home. I want to put my feet up. I do not want to think about. I'm just glad that nothing happened. When all of a sudden, 4 mercenaries come up behind her when she is closing up shop, and they try to rob her, basically. They try to attack her. They try to rob her. When along comes Selena. She manages to kill all but one of them, who managed to run away. So she lets out some steam, And then she does end up getting like a cut on her arm or something. And Irene notices it, and she's like, "Oh, thank you so much for saving my life. Let me heal you. I'm a healer. It's the least I can do." And Selena at first, she's like, "No." But then afterwards, she's like, "Okay, fine." So Irene takes her to her little room, which is basically like a closet. I'm picturing Harry Potter's room, like the room under the stairs. That's where she's living. And she basically goes and she like heals Selena. While she's sitting there, she tells her whole life story. She's like, "Yeah, my mom was murdered. I wanted to be a healer. I wanted to go to the southern continent, but I ran out of money." And her plan was basically to go to the southern continent, learn how to be a healer, and then come back to Adeline because she just wants to help people. She's a good person. Selena's a little prickly. She's kind of like, "Okay, then why don't you just leave?" Like, don't keep wasting your time here. Like, you're gonna spend the rest of your life here if you keep doing this. But she eventually softens a little. And Irene's like, "Yeah, I guess so." But, like, she feels like she's stuck. Selena does decide to teach Irene a little self-defense maneuvers. She teaches her a little, like, 1-2 punch. Like, if someone's attacking you, do all these things. And then they train until the early morning. But after meeting with Irene, Selena's basically, like, the next morning, she's decided that she is going to go through with the Red Desert. She's like, "I can't just keep staying in this place. I don't want to end up like Irene." So she's like, "You know what? She's committed to actually going to the Red Desert, and she decided she's not going to run away." And then comes the early morning, and the mercenary who got away, of course, comes back with like 5 more dudes. Selena hears them out in the alleyway. She's like, "Okay, you know what? You just wait here. I will deal with them." So she goes out and she's like fighting all these dudes. She's like killing people left and right. And Irene's kind of just like watching from the inside when all of a sudden a man comes up behind her and he has like a knife up to her throat. And he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." And he takes her to the alley in order to kind of stop Selena from killing all of his other fellow mercenaries. And then Selena uses this opportunity to be like, "Oh, I can't actually help you. You can help yourself," kind of. And she's basically like, "Okay, like, go for it. Kill her if you want." And then Irene finally fights back. She uses all those defensive maneuvers. She manages to escape. And at the end, Selena's like, "Good job, you did it." But Irene's not too pleased about this whole situation. She's like, you basically told them to kill me. But Selena's like, "I knew you could do it, though." Irene's still kind of in shock, and she's still not very pleased with Selena. She's like, "You basically almost let them kill me." But Selena's like, "But you could do it. You were fine. You did great." Anyways, Irene goes to wash the blood out of her clothes, which is like soaked in all the blood, and she has to start working. When she returns to her little closet/room/cubby, she finds a pouch filled with gold coins and a giant ruby brooch, as well as a note from Selena. "For wherever you need to go, and then some. The world needs more healers." An hour later, Irene leaves the White Pig and she never looks back. And Selena heads off to the Red Desert. Will we hear from Irene again? Only time will tell. But this concludes The Assassin and the Healer. She's traveled through grimy inns. She has passed through the Gulf of Oro. Our girl, Selena Sardathian, has finally made it to the Red Desert. So basically, she hired someone to take her to meet the Sesses Suicast, aka the Silent Assassins, which they will be known as from moving on forward because I cannot remember Sesses Suicast. I don't even think I'm pronouncing that right. Anyways, she hired this guide. He's taken through the desert, points in a general direction. He's like, "It is over yonder. They will find you. Goodbye." And he just leaves her in the desert. So she does wander the desert for a while, heading in the same general direction. And they eventually do find her. And she's taken to the Silent Assassin's Keep. Why is she here, you may ask? Well, after her stunt pulling After she pulled off the stunt of freeing 200 slaves, Arabin was not very pleased, to say the least. Yeah, he actually did end up beating her to a pulp. And now she is being sent to the Red Desert to get the approval of the Mute Master. It's just assumed that he's like Mr. Miyagi, but he doesn't speak. She has about 30 days to get his letter of approval. Arabin basically said, if you don't get it, then don't even bother coming back home. So she finally arrives to this oasis in the middle of the desert. She's exhausted, she's grimy, she's sweaty, and most importantly, she's unmasked. Arabin basically ordered that she not hide her identity in any form or way. He said that he needs the letter of approval to be written off to Selena Sardothian, and basically he said, since you clearly have no regard for my best interest, then I'm not going to have any regard in protecting your identity. She's brought before the Mute Master. She basically like bows in front of him, and then he says nothing, but then he just kind of like does like a little signal. He's like, go. And then 4 people just come and they basically try to attack her. But obviously she's Selena Sardothian. She fights them all off despite being dehydrated and gross and sweaty. And the master then allows her to stay in the keep for the month to train. Then she meets Ansel, this gorgeous, gorgeous girl. She has red hair and reddish eyes, and she's always wearing this full suit of armor. It's apparently like very expensive, and she always has this like really intricate big sword on her at all times. This is supposed to be Selena's new roommate. Ansel's been at the keep since she was about 13. She's about 18 now, and she's a little bit of a chatterbox. She's like a very friendly, very like nice girl. She shows her around. She takes her to meet all the other assassins. And yeah, she's like a nice, friendly girl, which is kind of weird for Selena because she basically hasn't had friends for most of her life. She hasn't really like known people that are her age. So this is kind of like all very new to her. She's not exactly loving how extroverted and how chatty Ansel is. Overall, she's not really been having a good time since she is still covered in bruises and she's still like recovering from the beating of her life. Ansel shows her around. She meets a whole bunch of other young little assassins that are their age. So it turns out that while they are called the Silent Assassin's Keep, silence is a choice, not a requirement, which was something that Selena's not very fond of, but that's fine. She notices that at this keep, there's people from all over the continent of different nations around there, and she notices something very strange, and it's the fact that they're all pretty nice. They're like nice people. Like, yeah, sure, it's an assassin school, and they're like renowned and everything and deadly, but everyone for the most part pretty chill. And as she's like getting a little acclimated, we do get some little flashbacks about what happened when she did return to Rifthold after the whole slave thing. It's still pretty fuzzy because basically she was beat within an inch of her life and then she kind of blacked out, so the details are a little hazy there. But one thing that she does remember is that Sam was there, and basically he had to have 3 people holding him back, and she remembers him screaming something, but still pretty hazy, doesn't remember most of it. But she was like, why was he screaming at Arabin? Back at dinner, Selena meets Ilias. So Ilias is the son of the Mute Master. He's kind of like the protege of the Silent Assassins, so kind of have like a little bit in common there. And yeah, she just meets a whole bunch of like other little assassins. The next day, Selena's basically, yeah, she's ready to train. She's ready to go. She's like, I need to get my letter. I need to train with him so I can get this over with, and then I can just go home. Turns out, though, while the master's letting her stay at the keep, he technically hasn't agreed to train her yet. So Ansel, her roommate, has basically been at the Assassin's Keep for 5 years, and the master still hasn't, like, chosen to train her yet, which is news to Selena. She's not exactly pleased about this. She's like, oh, look, I have 30 days. That's why I'm here, basically. But they basically tell her, you just have to wait. You have to wait for him to pick you. Choose you. Love you. Selena decides to go train with Ansel in the meantime. And by training, I mean they literally just like run across the desert to another oasis. And it's about 3 miles. I'm Canadian, so miles mean really nothing to me. But I don't think it's super long of a distance. However, Selena's not having a fun time with it. It basically takes her the entire day to go to the oasis and come back. I think it's like combined 6 miles. But remember, this is like literally through scorching deserts. And she's dehydrated and she's like not having a great time. She comes back at like night, basically. Which is pretty surprising because I feel like so far she's been good at everything. So it's kind of nice seeing her help a little. Just taking down a couple notches, but that's fine. She keeps at this for a couple of days. She eventually does get better. But yeah, she's really surprised to see that the assassins really work together. They learn from each other. And this is something that she's never really experienced before. Because working at the keep, Arabin basically trained, like, pit them up against each other. He was told that everyone at the keep was basically fighting against each other. And everyone was their enemies. So this is, like, very new to her. And then one night, there's an attack. Now, basically, there's this dude named Lord Barrick. He is from this little town, this little port town here of Zandria. He's the lord of this town, and basically he is trying to get into the good graces of the King Adarlan. Because apparently when he was conquesting, he asked Lord Barrick for aid, and Lord Barrick did not provide it. Since then, obviously the king has expanded his territory, and Lord Barrick's been trying to get into his good graces ever since. How does he plan on doing this? By delivering the mute master's head on a silver platter. Or so in theory. Apparently they've been at war for a very long time, but he hasn't actually been able to capture him yet. So they like get these constant attacks back and forth. And then one night there's an attack in the middle of the night. Basically like these soldiers come and then they are spotted up cresting on a dune and they're about to attack. They do manage to fight them off. They do start like this giant wall of fire and scare them off. And they're kind of scared off. This whole situation seems a little bit sus because apparently there was an envoy of assassins that were sent out earlier that day. So they're like, how did he know that there were less of us at the keep? Like some things, it's a little sus, but we'll keep that for later. We'll save that for later. Anyways, as a result of the attack, Ansel's basically been sent as a messenger, which she often does, to Zandria to talk to Lord Barrick. Ansel basically asks Lena if she wants to come with her. She's like, oh, maybe if like the master sees you putting in some effort, then he'll train you. So then Selena agrees, and then they decide to go on a little trip to Zandria. As they do journey through the desert, Ansel, being the chatterbox that she is, tells Selena a little bit more about her home, which is the Western Wastes, formerly known as the Witch Kingdom. We're gonna cut that in. I'm just using it to save space, okay? Selena asks if she's ever actually met a witch before. And Ansel tells her that basically when she was a child, she did. So Ansel is the daughter of a lord from Briarcliff. So her dad was like kind of a lord. It was her and her sister. And then one day, her and her sister went with one of her sister's friends to visit this like old tower. That used to be like a witch tower. And there was this rumor that if you went to the tower at a certain time, then you can like see through the door and look into a different world or something. So they went to check it out. Ansel was pretty young, so she decided to stay back and hide behind a rock or something. But her older sister and their friend went. They went for a couple minutes, and then she heard screaming. And then her sister came running back without the friend. Apparently, they had gone to the tower, and in there, they found a witch. They went to the archway, where they found this old woman with iron teeth, who grabbed her sister's friend. Her name's Maddie. So they ran away, they ran off to find their father. So they, like, brought back, like, a whole group of people to try to rescue Maddie, but when they came back, there was no trace of her. The only thing left, a pile of children's bones that had been picked clean. But the answer's like, don't worry. The secret to killing a witch is to chop off their head. And besides, we're master assassins, so it shouldn't be an issue. But Selena still kind of has chills after that story. I mean, it's kind of scary. And Ansel basically goes, like, if I were in charge of the Assassin's Keep, I would want to do something more productive. Like, I would actually want to hunt down the witches, and I'd want to actually do something for good. Like, I don't want to just wait around waiting for someone to basically buy my contract. Like, I want to actually make a difference. And she would like to use the Assassin's Guild for glory and to protect the unprotected, especially in the Flatlands, which apparently this is like it's not a very peaceful place. They keep journeying through the desert. Finally, they do make it to Zondria, and when they do arrive, it's market day. Selena's thinking that she's going to go in with Ansel to meet Lord Beric, but Ansel's like, no, this is like confidential master's business. You can hang out outside, though. So Selena's basically just left in town to shop for the whole day, and Selena loves shopping. She loves the finer things in life. So she's like, honestly, at first she's not very happy that she came all this way to not be able to help, but at the end of the day, she does love shopping. So she's looking at like these shoes, these perfumes, when all of a sudden this little merchant, this little stand catches her eye. What is he selling? Spider silk. So basically spider silk is supposed to be as light and silky as gossamer, but also as thick as steel or something. Like you can like stop any arrows and like kind of like bulletproof. It's very, very expensive material. It's actually made by these giant spiders who are like the size of a horse. And they only they only trade in basically like dreams and years and stuff like that. Like very rare and very difficult thing to get. And Selena's basically like, what is this doing here in this little port town, basically in like the middle of nowhere in this desert? And she looks at this vendor. It's like this middle-aged man, and he recognizes that she's from the north. He's like, oh, like what's this girl from the north doing here? Like, you're not from these parts, basically. And she's like, well, you're not either, I would think. But yeah, so the merchant is basically heading off to the southern continent to sell the spider silk. He was just putting up a shop there in the meantime, but he's like, it's very rare that people actually recognize what this is. So they get to chatting, and he's like, oh, like, how old are you, basically? And she's like, oh, I'm 17, because she did just turn 17, basically when she was crossing the desert. Yeah, it's just a very unremarkable birthday for her, unfortunately, but she is now 17. And he's like, oh, you know what? I'm not much older than you. And then she just kind of laughs, like, yeah, because she's like at least in his 40s. But then he's staying serious, and she's like, what do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
So then he explains how he got the spider silk. So apparently he went to meet with a Stigarian something spiders by himself, and he did end up trading with them. And the cost for, I think it was like 100 yards of spider silk was 20 years of his life. And he kind of figured that they would take the 20 years off at the end of his life, but no. They took it off right away. So he was 25, and right now he's basically a 25-year-old stuck in a 45-year-old man's body. The only way that he is ever able to get his years back, essentially, is if someone kills the spider that made the deal with him. So he's like, well, girl from the north with all these weapons and stuff, are you possibly interested? And then she's like, wait, how do you know that I'm an assassin? And he's like, well, like, you're literally a child by yourself with all these weapons in the middle of this desert. Like, I know the desert's keepers around there. It's like, oh, like, do you, like, are you a part of, like, the assassin's keep? Are you, like, one of Lord Beric's spies, basically? And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, no, I've just been hearing some things about guards, like, some weird dealings going on between Lord Beric and the spies. Like, between Lord Beric and the assassins. And then she's kind of, like, takes that in for later. She's kind of like, that's interesting. That's funny. But she moves on. She does say that. She's like, well, and about the job offer, she's like, well, I am actually pretty busy right now. Like, got a lot going on this summer. But you know what? If you're ever on Rifthold, reach out to Arabin Hamel and maybe we'll talk. And he, like, immediately knows who Arabin Hamel. He's like, oh, okay. And he's like, you know what? Just as a reminder, he gives her, like, this little tiny piece of spider silk, and he's like, I'm giving to you this, like, he just kind of gives it to her as a gift, which is, like, in itself super expensive, but he's like, I'm giving this to you as a reminder that everything has a cost. And they basically go on their own way. A couple hours pass, and then Ansel finally meets up with Selena, and she takes her to Lord Beric's stables, where he has just acquired 2 Asterian horses. Now, Asterian horses are, like, also super duper rare, super expensive, basically worth their weight in gold. Apparently they're like an ancient breed of horses. And Ansel's like, oh, do you know how to ride? And Selena's like, yes, of course, obviously. And she's like, good. And she jumps on the horse, and then she runs off. And Selena's basically left with no other choice but to get on the other horse and run after her. So basically they stole these like super valuable, very expensive horses. And then they just hightail it back to the Assassin's Keep. They decide to spend one more night in the desert before heading back into the keep, and they're bonding. They're like begrudgingly becoming pretty good friends. And Ansel confesses something to Selena. She's like, I've been lying to the master since I came to the Assassin's Keep. Basically, there is no Briarcliff anymore. There hasn't been one for 5 years now. So apparently there was this other lord calling himself the High King of the Wastes. Yet another king to remember. Actually, I don't think we have to remember him, but just another king. He was basically going around, and he was, like, pillaging all of these villages. So he basically showed up to Briarcliff. He's like, surrender everything. I'm going to be the new High King now. Now, Ansel's father was like, we have enough, like, tyrants roaming around right here. We already, like, there's already the king of the Adarlan. We don't need another king to basically take over. So he refused. And he was like, that's not happening. So then he went away, and then he came back one day. So Ansel was basically in the kitchen. When she saw his men approaching, she decided to hide in a cabinet. And, like, to hide into, like, one of the cabinets. And then she saw Lord Locke. Lord Locke is his name. Basically go up. Her sister and her father were upstairs, so that she saw them bring them down to the kitchen, and she basically witnessed them slit their throats in front of her. Obviously, she was still hiding. She didn't say anything or come out. But, yeah, pretty traumatizing. As soon as Lord Locke left, she basically grabbed her father's sword, and she just hightailed it out of there. So she was running and running until she eventually ran into an iron-toothed witch. The witch told her that she wasn't fated to die there, essentially, and that she would meet her fate in the Red Desert, in the Silent Assassin's Keep. She's been, like, at this Assassin's Keep, and she says that eventually her goal is to return to Briarcliff and to take it back from Lord Locke, essentially to, like, murder him for murdering her family. And yeah, they just have, like, nice night after that, bonding under the stars. Yeah, and then the next day they decide to return back to the keep. And lo and behold, the master knows about the horses. So he is none too pleased about this. They're basically, like, bowing in front of him, and he's obviously not saying anything, but he's just, like, looking at them with disapproval. Selena is kind of having flashbacks of that time, of, like, going back to see Arabin. She's like, he might just beat the shit out of me for stealing these horses, basically. But yeah, she's having some flashbacks, and then she finally remembers what Sam was screaming when she was being beat up. He was screaming, I'll kill you, to Arabin Hamel. And in her mind, she's like, why would he do that? That's, like, why would you threaten to kill the king of the assassins? Like, that's insane. She's still in front of the mute master, and now that her and Ansel are friends, Selena's like, I don't want Ansel to be kicked out or in trouble because of this, what happened, so she decides to take responsibility. She tells the master that it was her idea to take the horses, and that she'll, like, take responsibility for whatever happened. They're essentially put on stable duty as a result of this, nothing too serious. Since confessing and taking responsibility, the master does finally agree to train her. So they spend their next couple lessons training together. Basically, he just has her watching a snake, like, slither around, and then she, like, mimics the movements. It's very Karate Kid coded. And yeah, so she spends the next couple days just, like, following desert animals and mimicking them. But yeah, she spends her days training. They do stable duty together, and then Selena realizes that Ansel is actually, like, probably one of her first friends, and she's, like, one of the... They're just bonding. They become very close. They have, like, this midsummer festival. She does Ansel's makeup, and she dances with Ilias, who is the mute master's son. He does try to make a move on her. He tries to, like, kiss her afterwards, but Selena's never been in a romantic relationship before, and like, the only thing going through her mind is Sam screaming that he would kill Arabin for her, so she's like, I'm sorry, I cannot do this. But the next morning, during the stable duties, Ansel and Selena do get into, like, this fight. It's just, like, a stupid little fight. I don't even really know what it's about. It's not really very important. But Ansel storms off, and Selena's left doing stable duty by herself. And then that night, Selena is training with the mute master again, and then you can tell that she's distracted and something's on her mind, because they're, like, months almost up, and she kind of just admits to, like, that she's pretty scared to go back to Rifthold. She says she feels like everything's like changed ever since Arabin beat her, and it's just like a new dynamic for her. So yeah, she kind of comes to terms with her feelings. She did mention that she bought a apartment that she's keeping a secret from Arabin, and she's kind of like, in her mind, she's kind of ready to leave the Assassin's Keep. The Mute Master dude listens to her, and then they put together all of the animal things in a Karate Kid fashion, and then they just have a Karate Kid montage. The next day, Ansel comes back and she's apologizing for the fight. And she tells Selena that Ansel has like a whole bunch of people around her and she's like really friendly with, but she says that Selena's basically the first true friend that she's had at the Assassin's Keep. She says that she'll miss her when she leaves, and she also says to remember her fondly. And to kind of toast to their new friendship and everything, she gives her a glass of wine. However, the wine happens to be poisoned, and Selena is knocked out, and she basically wakes up the next day in the middle of the desert having no idea what happened. She finds a note from Ansel basically saying that the Mute Master was letting her go. He was giving her a sealed letter of approval, but it was like all wrapped up. And that he just didn't want to embarrass her in front of everyone else, but she's good to go. Selena's pretty hurt and kind of confused about this whole thing. She's like, why would they just send me away like that? Like, this is all very strange, but okay, sure. If they don't want me, then I'm not going to stay, you know? She does have Hisley, which is the Asterian horse. So then she decides to just wander back to Zandria. On her way there, though, she does see this giant army of Lord Beric's men heading towards the keep. And she kind of thinks, oh, that's, like, they probably saw the attack coming and they just sent me away to avoid it. But then in her mind, she's like, I'm the greatest assassin in the world. Why would they not want my help? So she gets even more pissed off and more hurt. And she continues on to Zandria. And then Selena goes back to Zandria, and she still kind of, like, doesn't feel right about the way that things ended. And finally she decides to just, like, break the seal and open the letter of approval, only to find that it is blank. There is no letter of approval. And then she remembers about the spider silk merchant basically saying that there was these, like, strange dealings going on between the Lord Beric and then some spies within the Assassin's Keep. And Selena basically realized that she has to run back. So then Selena realizes that she should really get back and probably help the silent assassins, because there was like an army of 200 men like coming straight towards them. So she decides to run back with Cassida. Cassida is the name of the horse. Yeah. Run back. Running like the wind. Yeah, Selena makes it back to the keep, and the place is literally littered with bodies, like, everywhere. And it's kind of strange because it doesn't seem like there was any forced entry or anything. It just seems like all the bodies are inside of the keep. So obviously this was like an inside kind of job. And her mind immediately goes to the Mute Master. He's like, they're obviously here for him. So then she goes to find him. And like, as she's finding him, in her mind, she's like, there's no way that this is Ansel. Because like, in the back of her mind, she's like, it's probably Ansel, but she's like, nope, it's not. I can't, like, my only one friend cannot be in charge of this huge betrayal. And like, no, it's not possible. It's not Ansel. There is no war, Ba Sing Se. But yes, she gets closer and closer to the Master, and then she finally reaches his room, and who is over him with a sword basically, like, right up to his neck? But Ansel. Ilias, his son, is basically, like, at the door. He's, like, bleeding out, about to die, but then Ansel's going straight for the Master. So then Selena manages to like, toss a dagger in time, and she stabs Ansel in the arm, and then they get into this fight. Remember, Ansel's throwing like this full body armor, but this whole fight is pretty difficult for Selena because this isn't just like a nameless person or like a nameless contract that she's after. This is actually like her friend, like her first ever friend, basically. And she asked Ansel, like, why are you doing this? Why is this happening? And Ansel said that Lord Beric essentially promised her 100 men so that they could march into the Western Wastes, the Flatlands, and they can take out Lord Locke. And at this point, they're fighting, but Selena's still not able to make like a killing blow or anything. So she's basically begging Ansel not to kill the Meat Master. She's like, please don't do this, because I really do not want to have to kill you. And Ansel's like, you don't have to kill me. You can come with me. We can take over the wastes together. which Selena obviously says no. But yeah, they continue fighting. Ansel actually does manage to like scratch her face, which is a very big deal for her because Selena's obviously she's very vain. So not pleased with this, but they continue fighting. It gets to a point where Ansel has like the sword up to Selena's neck, and she like basically like she cuts her neck, not completely open yet, but there's like blood seeping out of her neck. And then she finally uses her Karate Kid training, and she does the whole quick as a snake, quick as an asp thing, and then she manages to like stab Ansel. Doesn't kill her yet though. She's like very capable of killing her, but Ansel's basically on the floor begging for her life, and Selena can't really bring herself to do it. So she's like, and outside she hears that the assassins are winning the whole war with Lord Barrick's men. So Selena says, I am going to give you 20 minutes. Pack your things and get the hell out of here. At 20 minutes, I'm going to be on that rooftop. I'm going to shoot an arrow, and if you're still in the vicinity, then I am going to kill you. Like, that's a promise. I'm going to have to kill you. So, yeah, she ends up giving Ansel her father's sword back, which, oh, yeah, the sword was the only thing that Ansel had of her father. So she gives her the sword, and then she tells her to go home. The assassins come in time. They rescue Ilias. He makes it through. The mute master is okay and alive and well. And then 20 minutes later, Selena goes up to the rooftop, and she sees Ansel as like a distant blur, running off to Briarcliff, basically. In the silence of the fortress, the bowstring twanged like a mournful harp. The arrow soared, turning relentlessly. The red dunes passed beneath in a blur, closing the distance. A sliver of winged darkness edged with steel, a quick, bloody death. Hisley's tail flicked to the side as the arrow buried itself in the sand just inches below her rear hooves. Hisley is the other horse, by the way. But Ansel didn't dare look over her shoulder. She kept riding, and she did not stop. Selena lowered her bow and watched until Ansel disappeared beyond the horizon. One arrow, that had been her promise. But she'd also promised Ansel that she had 20 minutes to get out of range. Selena had fired at minute 21. So basically she did let Ansel go. See some character development there, I guess. The next morning, Selena's called into the master's chambers, and she hears him speak. He basically breaks his vow of silence. He tells Selena that he knew about Ansel's father the minute that she got here. He was basically just waiting for her to confess to him, which she never did. Yeah, he was basically just waiting for her to choose her fate. And he was saying that basically he was waiting for her to come to terms with it because she has to learn how to face her pain in order to endure it. And he also says that Selena was probably the closest thing that Ansel ever had to a friend at the Assassin's Keep. And basically, in exchange for saving his life and saving Ilias's life, he then gives Selena her letter of approval, as well as 3 trunks filled with gold. He basically says that the gold is to pay off her debt to Arabin. He knows that she's basically like an indentured slave, like an indentured servant to him. And he tells her to tell Arabin that the gold was also as a reminder that in the Red Desert they do not abuse their disciples, and that she will always have a place in the Red Desert. Which brings us to the end of this novella. Selena has returned to Rifthold, and with her she brings the Master's letter of recommendation, an Asterian horse, and 3 trunks filled with gold. And not just that, she also comes back with a purpose. She is finally going to go up to Arabin, and she's going to give him a piece of her mind. She is going to tell him that she is moving out. She swaggers into his office. She is ready. She is a woman on a mission. And then he tells her to sit down and wait. And then he does the unexpected. He apologizes. He gets down literally on his knees, offers her a giant emerald brooch, one that goes perfectly with all of her outfits because he just knows her so well. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I regretted almost killing you ever since you left. I'm so sorry I beat the shit out of you, essentially. And that's not all. He also offers her a job. So, apparently, there is an envoy coming from Melisande. I'm going to go on this side this time. Melisande is this country right over here. So essentially, there's an envoy. People come from here, and they're reaching up to Rifthold, and their goal is to meet with the king and get him to give them supplies to create, like, a road that will connect the 2 kingdoms. And a big feature of that road is that it will be used as like a slave route, basically. So a part of this envoy is Benzo Donoval. He is the ex-husband of Leifer Bardingale. Oh my god, these names. Anyways, he is her ex-husband. She is the one who's essentially meeting with the king. But Donoval is traveling with some sensitive documents with proof of high-ranking people in Melisande who are against the slave trade. So apparently his plan is to use this list in order to blackmail these people to like go along with the slave trade, essentially. And the whole idea is that it'll help them move the whole slave trade along quicker and get the road done quicker. So as a result, Leifer, his ex-wife, has contracted Arryn Hamel because she wants to get these papers back and she wants them to dispatch Donoval. It's a job that pays pretty well, and Arryn's willing to waive his cut so that she gets the majority of the money. And he kind of figures, since he loves the slaves so much, here we go. Basically with that, all of her drive and her determination just kind of dissipates. She doesn't say that she'll take it, but her resolve to leave is kind of gone a little. So Arryn's basically going, I missed you. Please take this job. Please forgive me. And Selena doesn't forgive him yet, and even though there was no excuse in this world for what he had done, Arryn was all she had. The history that lay between them, dark and twisted and full of secrets, was forged by more than just cold. So she tells him that she'll think about it, and she basically just goes back up to her room. On her way there, she runs into Sam Cortland. Now, things are still a little shaky between them. Like, they obviously hated each other at first, and they kind of became friends-ish, but Selena still doesn't really know how to be friends. So she doesn't know how to deal with this dynamic change. She's basically about to tell him that she missed him, though. He looks unharmed, which is like a relief for her. He does, like, one of the first things that he does notice is a scar on her neck, which is the one that Ansel gave her. She's still pretty defensive about this. Like, she's taking Ansel's betrayal pretty rough. So she does get a little, like, defensive, and she's like, it's just like a kind of awkward interaction. And right when she's about to tell him that she missed him, along comes Lysandra. So, Lysandra is a courtesan, basically, or courtesan in training. Just like Sam and Selena, she was brought there when she was an orphan. She was about 10 when she was brought there, but instead of being trained to be an assassin, she's being trained to provide pleasure. And Selena and Lysandra do not get along, which... shocking, I know, because she gets along with so many people. But yeah, they hate each other. She hates Lysandra, basically. And Lysandra's kind of like a little all over Sam. She's like touching his arm. She's like talking about the summer that they had. And she's like, oh, Sam, we're waiting for you at the party. And Selena does not take this great. Sam's always kind of had a soft spot for courtesans because his mother actually was one before she was murdered by a jealous client. But yeah, Selena is not loving the closeness, the proximity in between them, if you will. And once she sees that Lysandra's doting all over Sam, she decides to storm off. The next day, Selena wakes up and she has like more expensive, extravagant gifts from Arryn. And then she decides to take a self-care day. She gets her nails done, she gets her hair done, she like goes back to shopping. She just has a day for herself.
Treat yourself.
Really bringing herself back to her old glory, especially after spending like 3 months in the middle of the desert and like in gross inns and stuff. So she needs this. And as she's getting all ready, she sees the envoy from Melisande, and she finally decides to go to Arryn and tell him that she's going to take the job with Benzo Donoval to kill him. Arryn continues to shower her in gifts. He gives her like the super expensive skin-tight suit that she doesn't have to pay for, but Sam's also getting a matching one and he has to pay for it because, yeah. And after she's getting as she's getting fitted, when she's leaving from getting fitted, she runs into Sam again and they chat a little, and Sam's kind of like, I'm really surprised that you're accepting his gifts. Like he kind of calls her out for basically letting Arryn buy her forgiveness. So Selena's obviously like, he's not buying her forgiveness. What are you talking about? Like, I haven't forgiven him yet, but it seems as though you have. Like, what was the price of your forgiveness, basically? And he goes, My price was his oath that he'd never lay a hand on you again. I told him I'd forgive him in exchange for that. And Selena feels pretty bad and she storms off again. So he feels pretty bad about the way that she's been treating him. So that night they go to the theater with Arabin and Lysandra. And things are pretty tense between them. But in an attempt to extend an olive branch, Selena says that he looks nice. And of course he does, because this is the Maas verse and everyone is extremely attractive and beautiful. But yes, she's like, you look nice. To which he responds, you look beautiful. Though I bet you already knew that. Classic Sam. Anyways, and then they watch the theater production. It's like an opera or something. Selena loves the theater. It's where she feels the most at home. She loves the music. Basically, at the end of the performance, she has like tears streaming down her face because she's just so in love with the theater and the music. And she's basically the last person to leave the theater. That night, there's a party for Lysandra, but Selena obviously hates her, so she decides not to go. Instead, she goes to one of like the music rooms in the Assassin's Keep, because they don't just teach fighting. They also have like other special skills. So they like know different languages, and then they know like etiquette and stuff. Yeah, anyways. So she goes to one of the rooms with the pianoforte, and then she decides to try to play back the melody from the theater from memory, but she just can't get it right. Like, she heard it once. Yeah, but she loves the pianoforte. She's just having a great old time being with herself. And then she finds Sam basically standing outside of the room listening to her play. They try to make some small talk. She asks him about the summer. He asks her about hers. He does admit that Arabin did beat him, but that wasn't his true punishment. So his true punishment was actually having to watch Arabin beat Selena up in front of him. And she's kind of like, why was that your punishment? He's like, after Skull's Bay, you should know this. Like, he's dropping some heavy hints here, but she's not ready yet, you know? In an attempt to kind of like change the mood, she's like, oh, like, it seems like you've had a good summer though, like with Lysandra, and she kind of teases him about it, and she's like, oh, did you have any summer romances? Because I know I sure did. And Sam does not take that great. And she kind of like sees the pain on his face, and she feels pretty bad about it. She's like, she doesn't feel as satisfied. And feeling guilty, she finally decides to ask him if he wants to help with her mission at Donoval. So then they decide to work together. They're like stalking his house. They're scoping everything out, preparing for the day of the transfer of papers and stuff. Donoval's house is pretty well guarded. He has like a ton of guards, and they're all like pretty well trained, which is a little bit surprising, but no big deal because they're the best assassins. What could possibly go wrong? Anyways, and then the next day, Selena's getting ready for Leifer's ball. She's having like this huge ball, which is a part of like the envoy. And as she's getting ready, she finds some papers on her bed. And what are they? The actual physical papers from the musical that are not planning to be released for like the next year. And they're literally stolen off of like the musicals, the sheet music. And who's it from? None other than Sam Cortland. Such a cutie. Such a sweetie. They end up going to the party. It's Arabin, Sam, and Selena. They're there to like kind of like scope out and keep an eye on Donoval. But really they just have a fun time. Like, Selena has a fun time. She gets some drinks. She gets some dancing done. She even dances with like this masked possible noble with sapphire blue eyes. It's about 3 a.m. at this time. But Sam does step in. He's like, and they start like flirting a little. But Sam immediately steps in. He's like, you're drunk. I don't want to, like, you're drunk. She's mine. Back off, basically. And then the masked stranger with sapphire blue eyes, just kind of was like, okay, you know what? I see. Enjoy your night. And then Selena's like, why would you do that? I was just having some fun. And Sam basically tells her that he, like, wants her. He basically goes, well, I care what you think. They get into, like, a little bit of an argument because he pulled her away. She's like, I don't really care what you think about me. I just want to have fun. And he's like, well, I care what you think of me. I care enough that I stayed at this disgusting party just for you. And I care enough that I'd attend 1,000 more like it so I can spend a few hours with you when you aren't looking at me like I'm worth the dirt beneath your shoes. But she's still reeling from Ansel's betrayal. She's like, this is too much for me right now. Like, I don't even know how to be a friend, never mind anything else. So, like, this is just not the time for me. And honestly, I get it. I would take a romantic breakup over a friend breakup any day of the week. Anyways, the next day, Selena's finally planning on breaking into Donovan's office. She wants to, like, scope out the papers and, like, kind of get her eyes on them before the whole trade goes down. So she tells Sam about her plan, but he's stuck on Lysander duty, basically. So he's like, I can be there after. And she's like, don't even bother. And she goes to Donovan's house by herself. And then she gets captured. Greatest assassin. Indeed. She wakes up in the sewers. The water is rising. Because of all the rain that they've been having recently, and because of, like, the convoy, I don't actually know if I'm saying that right. But anyways, because of the whole envoy thing, there's a lot of, like, dirt on the streets. And basically what the city does is that they flood the streets and the sewers to kind of get all the garbage out. And that is scheduled to happen today. So she wakes up. She is tied to a chair. And she is in the sewers. So basically, Donovan's bodyguard was like, I've been watching you stalk us for days now. We know that you're up to something. You're not very slick, basically. And now we're going to kill you. So they tie her up, throw her in the sewer. The water is rising, and then they leave her. The sewer is disgusting. It's like, there's like mice and refuse and stuff just floating on by. But she does manage to untie herself, but the water still keeps on rising and rising. And really, there's no, like, the way that they came out of was a sealed iron door, so there's no other exit that she can see. So she's basically being flushed away through the sewers, trying to get out, trying to find an exit. She manages to find, like, a tunnel or something that leads to the upper parts of the sewers, which is essentially where a manhole is. So she finally managed to get there. She's covered in, like, cuts and scrapes and everything. She's really clawing her way out. And when she finally gets to the manhole, the water is, like, going pretty high. And she goes to push it, and it is completely rusted shut. She is, like, giving it her all here. She's throwing her body against the manhole. She's screaming for help. She's trying to get out, but it is not budging. And no one is coming for her. When suddenly, she hears Sam. Like I said before, he was going to go and help her out, so he does eventually hear her screaming, and she tries to help her out. He tries to lift the grate, but it's completely rusted shut. It is not budging. He gets a knife in, tries to wedge it open, nothing. He gets a sword in, it breaks. It's not budging. She's, like, screaming for her life, trying to get out. He's lifting her out, trying to scream for help as well. And at this point, she knows that she's not going to make it out. The water is rising. It's up to her face now. There is no escaping at this point. And before she goes under, she tells him, take my body home to Terracin. And then she dies. JK, she wakes up on the street. Turns out there were some people who heard Sam screaming. They brought a crowbar over. He managed to, like, just get her out. She did drown for a couple minutes, so he's, like, literally reviving her. But she makes it. She's in pretty rough shape. She has cuts all over her body. She literally drowned in sewage water. So she basically spends the next couple of days taking baths in alcohol. And she just doesn't feel clean anymore. Like, it was a pretty traumatizing experience for her. Obviously, she almost died. And she, like, does not want to see anyone. She wants to just drown in her alcoholic baths. Until Sam comes to check on her. And then she begrudgingly thanks him for saving her life. And she apologizes just for Skull's Bay and everything. And she finally just, like, tells him about her experience in the Red Desert and tells him about her summer. And she kind of, like, lets everything out. And this is, like, it's a good time for her, kind of. She, like, comes to terms with everything that happens. Now that she's finally let it out, she's finally ready to confront Arabin and let him know that she's moving, that she's leaving. So after her discussion with Sam, she gets her giant trucks of gold, and she goes to Arabin's office, and she says, my debt is paid. She doesn't tell him about leaving yet, but she's like, I do want to keep working with you, but I don't want to be like your indentured servant any longer. Arabin's pretty sad, and like she kind of thought that she would like paying off her debts and everything would make her feel a lot better, but when it comes down to it, she doesn't really she feels kind of bad about like leaving him. She doesn't tell him about her apartment or that she's moving out yet. Just like baby steps, kind of. Then later that night, they're back in the sewers. They're trying to like find another way to complete the mission. And Selena's with Sam, obviously. And he kind of brings up the fact that he's thinking about leaving to Eelway. And she's kind of like, what? And he's basically saying that there is nothing for him in Rifthold. Like, Rifthold's always going to be her territory. And he can't stay working under Arabin. It's just, he hates him, essentially, for what he did to Selena. He's basically like, I'm probably going to leave by the end of the month. And then he's like, unless I have a reason to stay. And then he's basically like, the moment I woke up after he beat me, I realized I had to leave because I was going to kill him if I didn't. But I couldn't. Not until you came back. Not until I knew you were all right. Until I saw that you were safe. So he's basically saying, now that you're back and that you're okay with Arabin, I can't stay any longer. And then she's just like, why can't you just let it go? And then he basically says, it's because I love you. Which is so cute and sweet. So she's like, why can't you just let this go? And he's like, because I love you. And then they kiss. And yeah, they're just cute. They like get together and they're so cute and they're making out in the tunnels. And then later that night, in the silence of her bedroom, she swore an oath to the moonlight that if Sam were hurt, no force in the world would hold her back from slaughtering everyone responsible. And they fell in love. And the next day, it is showtime. The time has come to murder Donovan and get those sensitive papers. The whole plan is that Sam is going to start a distraction in the basement. He's basically going to like start a fire. And Selena's going to go up to the office. She figured out what time the meeting is supposed to be when she was at the party. So yeah, she's basically just waiting up in Aunt Donovan's office. They're a lot more careful this time. In terms of how they're watching the house, and she's waiting for Donovan to come up. So yeah, he eventually does show up with this other dude, and then right as they are about to trade papers, she murders Donovan. She like murders Donovan, like basically chops his head off. However, the dude that she's meeting with does manage to run away, because they always run away. There's always someone running away and getting free. But anyways. Oh yeah, the bodyguard comes rushing in, and he's like, what have you done? You have no idea what you've done. And Selena's like, oh, I do. And then she murders him. And then right before she murders him, he goes, Donovan loved his country. You have no idea what you've done. And then she runs after the other dude. She runs around the alleys, she tries to find him, eventually does find him. But then something weird happens. So he basically is cornered. He takes out the papers, he lights a match, and then he lights them on fire. And then he takes a little vial of poison, and then he kills himself in front of her. And she's like, what's going on? Anyways, she manages to put out the papers right before they're all completely singed. And when she looks, she sees like a copy of Safe Houses. But these are for Aderlin, not for Melisande. And then she looks at the papers that she has, that she took from Donovan, and those are Safe Houses from Melisande. I want to say, like, places outside of Aderlin. So she's like, something doesn't feel right. She ends up burning the papers with the Safe Houses in Aderlin. And then she returns the other papers to Arabin. And she calls it a night. She's like, okay, my deal is done. Like, my job is done. So yeah, Selena's like, okay, my job is done. She slides the papers under Arabin's door, and then she goes to bed. The next morning, Arabin is not very pleased. So the whole distraction that they caused was like a huge thing. It ended up being like an explosion. And she only ended up getting half of the papers back, and she has no proof of Donoval's body. So he's like, you're not going to be paid for this. This was a terrible job, essentially. But Selena's like, okay, that's fine. Like, as long as I ended up helping the slaves, I'm fine with it. And then Arabin goes, you still haven't figured it out? And then her whole body goes cold. So it turns out Leifer was actually the one who was negotiating the trade deal with the king, and she was the one who was negotiating the slave deal. Donovan was actually trying to set up safe houses in order to help the slaves. Leifer was the one who was planning on blackmailing all of the people in the list. So the whole thing was basically a setup. That morning, Selena had decided to sell her Astarian horse to Leifer because she thought that she was like a good person who was against the slave trade. So she has all this money. And at this point, Selena's kind of done. She's like, I'm getting all this money from the horse. It's being transferred to your bank immediately. I'm buying Sam's freedom. He is now free. And everyone's like, that's fine. You know what? Actually, my bank account was feeling a little empty because I used all of the gold that you got from the Red Desert, and I used it to bid on Lysandra for her coming out party. And for Selena, that was the last straw. She's like, I'm moving out. Don't you dare talk to me again, because if I see you again, I will kill you. So essentially, Sam and Selena storm out, and they're like, we are done. Don't talk to me. I will see you never. So yeah, Selena's basically done at that point. She's like, you used all of the money that I worked so hard for to pay for this girl that I absolutely hate. And she's like, we're done. I have paid off Sam's debt. We're moving out. We are done with you. Do not try to contact me again or I will murder you. And so ends The Assassin and the Underworld. Dun dun dun. All right, we have made it to our fifth and final novella, The Assassin and the Empire. All right, so it has been about a month since Selena and Sam left Arabin and his assassin's keep. They've been a little busy. So Sam has been spending the last couple of weeks fighting in this like underground fight club, basically just beating people up for money. Selena doesn't really love it because he is fighting in this place called the Vault, and they are notoriously pretty dangerous. They're run by like this underground criminal organization, and she's like, people sneak in weapons all the time, people get killed there. But ever since they've left Arabin's Keep, they have had no contracts, so they basically have not a lot of money. Sam is still pretty determined to leave Drifthold. He just wants to like leave everything behind. He wants nothing to do with Arabin anymore. But Selena's still a little hesitant. Rifthold's been her home for years. She's like, where are we gonna go? And on top of that, she goes, well, we also kind of need money before we're ready to leave. So she kind of uses that as an excuse. And another thing is that essentially they are a part of the Assassin's Guild. On top of it, if they do want to leave, they basically need permission from the Assassin's Guild, aka Arabin. So the Assassin's Guild is basically kind of like a Costco membership. You have to pay your monthly fees, and if you do want to like break the contract or leave, you have to pay a sum of money and you need permission, or else they will hunt you down and murder you. Sam's pretty determined to leave, but Selena doesn't, like, they still don't really want to face Arabin. They're still pretty pissed off about what happened. But they decide that they're going to meet him the next day. So then they go to meet Arabin. Selena's the one that has to do all the talking because Sam absolutely loathes him. Hates him to his core. So she basically goes, we want to leave. We want to leave Rifthold, and we want to leave the guild. What's it going to cost us, essentially? She makes like a proposal for a certain amount of money. And then Arabin's like, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're free to go. I'm not going to keep you hostage here. However, he counters her proposal for the parting fees that she has to pay. The amount that he counters for is down to the penny the amount of money that she has left in her bank account. So basically, he somehow knows exactly how much is in her bank account, and he wants all of it. Stan is furious about this. He's like, absolutely not. But Selena, she's done with Arabin. She's like, I want nothing to do with you. So she agrees to pay for this absorbent amount of money. And she's like, I will pay it to you, but I never want you to reach out to us again. I never want to see you again. Stay out of our lives and let us be. So she agrees to pay the amount. This leaves them with literally nothing. Sam decides that he needs to blow off some steam, so he goes off into the city. And Selena goes off as well. And a couple of hours later, he does come back. And he's like, okay, I found a job. Which is kind of suspicious, because they haven't had a job this entire time that they've left Arabin. And he's like, it's a job that pays very well. It'll be just enough for us to make it out of here. It'll be enough for us to, leave the continent, essentially. And Selena's like, what is this job? What do you know? So it was this random person that was hooded in a inconspicuous person. He has no idea who he was, basically. But they're basically paying a large sum of money for them to take out... These names are going to kill me. Eon, Jane, and Rourke Ferran. Sarah, are you trying to kill me? Anyways, we're going to call them Jane and Ferran. So Jane is the #1 crime lord in all of Rifthold. He's the one who manages all of the crime, basically. And Ferran is his #2. He is supposed to be super sadistic, super terrifying. He enjoys torturing people for fun, basically. And they're not great people. And Selena's like, are you insane? They are super dangerous, super well guarded. There's a reason that nobody is taking this contract, and that's because it cannot be done. But when it comes down to it, they have no money. So she's like, and they're supposed to be the best assassins. So she's like, do you know what? We'll think about this, but it's not looking good. But yeah, Selena thinks up, mulls it over a little bit. But then she realizes that she doesn't really want this life for Sam anymore. She doesn't want him to be living the life of the assassin. They should be having normal lives somewhere else. And in order to do that, they do need a payout in order to leave. So finally she decides that they will take on the job. So Sam is basically saying that he wants to be the one to take out Ferran because he is basically the devil incarnate or something. He's this really bad dude. And she can focus on Jane, who is the crime lord. And that way she'll get the recognition for Jane as being Aderlin's assassin or whatever. And that way he'll kind of protect her from Ferran. Selena doesn't love this at first, but she does feel bad that all of this has happened because of her. And because of that, she's like, okay, you know what? Yes, we'll do it your way. And then they begin to scout out Jane and Ferran. They begin to do all this busy work and stuff when it comes to taking people out, I guess. So yeah, they're getting ready to take them out. And then one day, when Sam's out scouting for the mission, she comes home, and who does she find in her living room? None other than Arabin Hamel. He knows about their mission. He knows about their contract for Eon and Ferran. And he's like, are you insane? There's a reason that we never took this contract. There's a reason that we never even considered this contract. He's like, you may be good, but you are not invincible. This is gonna kill you. Selena's not hearing any of it. She's like, just get out. I don't want you here. And he's trying to plant all this mistrust. He's like, do you really trust Sam? Does he really know the truth about you? And before he leaves, he admits to Selena that he loves her, which is something that he's never said in the past. Honestly, I don't understand too much what this means. I feel like it's just such a weird dynamic between them because he's in his 40s or something and she's 17. I don't know if he means that he loves her as a daughter or if he loves her romantically. But yeah, Selena's basically waited since her childhood to hear those words. So she realizes that he's saying this because he wants something from her. And that's something that Sam has never asked her. He's never asked anything from her, really. And then he, like, basically says that Arabin wants her to stay with him in Rifthold. And she's like, no, get out. Like, I am beyond done with you at this point. So he leaves. The next day, Sam and Selena are tracking for Ron. They're seeing what he does daily. They go to the vaults. They basically hear him, like, torture a man alive in the vaults. And they're a little uneasy, but you know what? They can take him. But they're still pretty confident. They're like, we can take him. So the plan is that Sam is going to take out Ferran first, because he's the more dangerous of the two crime lords. And then once he's taken out, Selena will take out Jane. So the next day, Sam is supposed to go take out Ferran. And he tells Selena that in the meantime, she can start packing because they are leaving in 5 days. And she's kind of like, and it kind of makes sense, but she's still like kind of having a hard time processing that they're leaving so quickly. And then he kind of goes, well, also, why didn't you tell me that Arabin was in our apartment, like, yesterday? He's like, he found me and he told me everything. And he's like, I just want to get rid of him. I want to leave Rifthold. I want to leave him behind. I don't want to deal with any of this anymore. And she agrees, so then she decides to start packing. And then the next day, Sam leaves on his mission. And this was something that he wanted to do it by himself, so he's like, don't worry, I'll be back later. I think they set a time that if he's not back by, like, a certain time, she can go out looking for him. But so Selena's left at home, just trying to distract herself. And then the hours start going by, basically. It's 9 o'clock. She still hasn't heard anything back from him. But you know what? She's like, I am letting him do this by himself. He is fine. And then all of a sudden it's 11. Still's not heard anything from Sam. At about 11, she decides to go out to the street, see if she hears anything about the downfall of Ferran, or if she hears any, like, chattering or anything going on. She hears nothing. She finds nothing. She's like, he must be back by now. So she goes back to the apartment. He's still not there. She's waiting in the apartment. She's pacing back and forth. A couple of hours later, she goes out again. No sign of him. Nothing's happening. There's no news or anything like that. She stays out until dawn, basically scouring the whole city, but there is no sign of Sam. Finally, she decides to go back to the apartment because he must be there by now. There's no way that he's not there. She's heading home when she sees the door open. She runs upstairs. She's ready to beat the shit out of him for scaring her like this. Except he's not there. Who's there? Once again, Arabin Hamel. And all he says is, I'm sorry.
We're keeping that in there.
This is like a dramatic moment. She shows up. Arabin's in her living room. And he says, I'm sorry. There is no way that this is happening. There is no way that this is fitting into her mind. But then Arabin tells her Jane and Ferran still thought that he lived at the Assassin's Keep. So they sent his body there as a message. Selena is still suspended in disbelief. She's like, no, that's not happening. No way. She runs to the Assassin's Keep. Arabin's trying to hold her back. She's like, it's better if you just don't. Like, don't do this. Please, like, begging her, do not go see him. He's basically begging her, like, do not see him. It's best if you don't. But she still goes down. She goes down. She goes to the mortuary that is in their basement of the keep. And she insists on seeing his body. So she goes into the mortuary. And there on the table is Sam. His body is basically broken. His eyes have been gouged out. There's burn marks all over his body. His bones are all broken. His hands are pointing in his fingers are like broken in the wrong direction. It's not a good sight. And Selena grabs her cloak. She covers his body. And then she lays down on the table next to him. She cannot let him go. There's like this strange smell on him. It's just not. She's still kind of not processing what's happening, really. So yeah, she basically falls asleep holding him. The next morning she wakes up and she's in her old room at the Assassin's Keep. And she is not processing this very well at all. She just stays in bed. She doesn't move. She doesn't eat. She just watches life go by, basically. The love of her life is gone. And then one of the nights, she overhears them talking outside of her room. And it's Arabin and three other assassins. They're like I'm assuming they're like one of his more trusted assassins from the beginning of the book. But she hears them plotting to take down Jane and Ferran. Basically, like, they have this plan. They're going to leave in like the next 3 hours. They mention that there's a window on the 2nd floor that they can like sneak into. And she hears Arabin mention that they can't tell anyone about this because Arabin basically mentioned that there was like a trap set for Sam, and that's why he didn't make it out. So he's like, don't mention this to anyone, not even your servants or whatever. And they set this plan. Now Selena's in her room, and once she hears them leave, she goes to try to like open the door, but she notices that Arabin's locked her in basically. But she is not going to let them steal her vengeance from her. She needs to be the one to take revenge. So she scours her room, her old room. All she finds are some regular boots, a black tunic, and then some like a couple of cheap weapons that she found that she had like left hidden there over the years. Mind you, she has been in a depressed state for the last couple of days now. She hasn't eaten, she has no strength, but she is resolved. She's like, I am not going to let them do this for me. I need to take revenge. I need to avenge Sam. The door is locked from the outside, so she runs out. So she jumps out of her window. She sneaks out. She's about to leave when Arabin's personal bodyguard, Wellesley, stops her. He's like, you need to think. Like, this is not, you're being way too impulsive right now. I know that you're grieving, but this is not the solution. And he's basically like, don't you see what's happening here? But she is not hearing a word of it, and she knocks him out. And then she runs off into the night. She finally makes it to Ione and Ferran's house, and she sees the window that they were talking about. Just her luck, it's open, and there's a curtain. Like, there's a curtain covering the inside, but the window's open. So she plans on running off the roof of this neighboring house and jumping through that window. So yeah, she catapults herself, jumps into the window, only to find a meeting room full of people. There is Ione, there is Ferran, and then there is a dozen guards waiting for her. This was a trap. That doesn't stop her. She's taking out guards left and right. She's killing people left and right. She is throwing her sword around. She is one person, but she is an army, basically. There is no stopping her now. She's manages to throw her dagger, and she kills Jane. She doesn't kill Ferran yet because she wants to take her time with him. She wants to make him suffer like Sam suffered. So she's taking out people left and right, and more guards are rushing in, and suddenly they start coming in with these weird masks. And then smoke starts to fill the room. It's the same strange smell that she smelt on Sam's body. Ferran's still sitting at that table, smiling at her as she is fighting through her life. She's gone feral at this point. The gas is making her dizzy, and she's almost on the verge of losing consciousness, but she is still fighting. She's still taking people out. And right before she passes out, she just sees him smile, and everything fades to black. She wakes up paralyzed before Ferran. She knows that someone has betrayed her. A trap has been set. The one silver lining, Arabin is still planning on coming. He's going to be there in a couple hours because he said that he was coming to take revenge in 3 hours. So her one shining hope is that Arabin is going to save her. Ferran's basically there in front of her, and he starts telling her his evil plan, like Dr. Doofenshmirtz, basically. He's like, yes, everything went according to plan. Everything is perfect. We killed Sam so that you could come, and you would go crazy, and you would kill Jane, and that would put me in charge of the criminal organization. So Ferran's like, I wish I could torture you and kill you right now, but I have an agreement. And that agreement was to hand you over to the king. And now if there's one person that Selena seems to fear, or one thing that Selena seems to fear, it is the king of Adarlan and like the glass castle, basically. She has this irrational fear, like whenever she was in town and she would walk near the tower, she would just feel extremely uncomfortable, really scared, and then she would try to like avoid it as much as possible. So this is not an ideal situation for her. But then she's knocked out again. And then when she wakes up, she is in the dungeons of the Glass Castle. And she's still waiting for Arabin to save her. But also, she is just completely defeated at this point. She has no more will. Like, Sam is gone. She's been captured. She's in the hands of Aderlin's king. Like, she is basically a shell of who she was before. She hears the guards talking. They're all kind of like murmuring. They're like, there's no way that this is Selena Sardothian. She's a child, basically. But she doesn't say anything. She just kind of stays in this catatonic state in the dungeons. She overhears that she's supposed to be executed, but once again, she can't. She's not in any state to react to any of this. And she's still kind of waiting for Arabin to save her. Eventually brought before the king, and she is charged for her crimes. It's in a private proceedings. All this is taking place in private proceedings. They didn't want anyone to know how young she was, especially with her track record and how notorious she was. So it's just like a closed court proceeding, basically. She's brought before this king. She remembers the king from before when she was in Terrasen. We don't really know what happened exactly, but she's always been terrified of him. So she's like not saying a word. She's basically mute. She's basically waiting for the order for them to execute her when the king asks if she has any requests, like any final requests. And finally she decides to speak up. The one thing she says is that they make her death a quick one. But she says it kind of as a challenge. And the king, quite a petty man. Instead of the execution, which was the original plan, he decides to sentence her to 9 lives of labor at Endovir, the salt mines, a death camp. I think the most people last there is about a month. So he wants her to suffer before she expires. And she is basically carted away in a prison cart and sent to Endovir. Next, we cut to the rooftops of Rifthold. Who is there? None other than Ferran, the new lead crime lord of Rifthold. And who else? Arabin Hamel. They had expected her to be put to death. Arabin had a plan, essentially, to rescue her. Then Ferran was like, well, this changes things, because the plan was that she was going to be executed. Arabin was supposed to mount this elaborate rescue from her. But now she's going to Endovir, there is no execution. So Ferran's like, well, I mean, it's a lot easier to rescue her now in the prison chariot. Arabin says nothing. And Ferran finally asks Arabin, why did you do it? Arabin's attention drifted back to the wagon, already a small dot in the rolling foothills above Rifthold. Because I don't like sharing my belongings. Intrigue. Crazy. I hate him. Thus making Arabin the most hated character ever. I think that's a pretty thing to do. So we end the book with Selena being carted away off to serve in the salt mines of Endovir. She is broken. There is nothing left in her. But as she is approaching the salt mines, she sees a white stag. Not just any white stag. A white stag from Terrasen. Most of these are said to have been hunted down, but she sees it staring at her, and it kind of resolves her. It gives her strength. And as she's entering the gates of Endovir, she says the one thing that Sam used to say every time he was afraid. She says, my name is Selena Sardothian, and I will not be afraid. And she repeats it enough times until she finally believes it. And so ends The Assassin's Blade. So we have finally made it to the end. If you're still here, thank you. I just want to get some quick little notes here. Honestly, reading this book was pretty rough for me. I didn't read this one first when I first started the series. I read it third, I want to say. And at that point, like, I'd already known that Sam didn't make it, essentially. So going through this book and seeing their relationship develop, oh, it was rough. It was rough. The romance is so good, but it's also so painful. That being said, honestly, Assassin's Blade, it's a little bit harder to get into, I would say, just because of the way that it's written. It is written as like a series of novellas, and I feel like you can really tell that when you're reading it. I feel like I got through it quickly because I already knew who Selena was. I already knew kind of her story, and this was just kind of like extra material for me to get to know her better. But if I didn't know her at first, I would say this is a little bit rougher to get into. But I have heard, and I know that this sets like a lot of things up for the future. So I'm excited to see where things come up in the future. I have a feeling that a whole bunch of these characters are going to be coming back, so I'm excited to see how that goes. I will say I am a romantasy girl, and I am here for the romance. So I did end up liking the second half of the book a bit more because we see more Sam, whereas the first one's a bit more action. It's a bit more, like, it's a lot of exposition for sure. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this series goes. I'm going to be doing Throne of Glass next. I don't know how long it will take me to get through that because I have to actually read the whole book, and I don't really remember a lot of the plot, which, you know, is why I'm making these videos. But yeah, thank you for watching my very first YouTube video. I hope to see you soon, and thanks for watching. Bye!